Mr. Mark Cuban, thank you
What's
so
up,
much
guys?
for doing this.
Sorry I was running late. I was literally out shooting hoops and getting some shots.
Uh,
I was running late. I apologize.
was that at the Maverick Stadium or somewhere closer to you?
My backyard.
All right, good to hear it. Thank you again so much for doing this. I think this will be a really cool opportunity for everybody. And for all of our audience, I have a healthy list of all of your questions, but at any point, if you'd like to ask more, you can utilize the chat pod. I see many of you already have. Uh, Mark, unless you'd like to open with something, we can get started with the
Well,
questions.
go
All
IU.
right,
I'm ready to answer any questions about anything. Let's go.
perfect. Would you be fine if we record this so people can watch it later?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, great. I'm trying if you could do that. That'd be fantastic. Okay, so starting off with college life, by far the number one question I got was if you could go back in time to meet yourself when you were graduating from IU, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, first, let me just say to everybody, if you didn't hear earlier, I just came off the court. I was getting up shots. So that's why I'm like this, because, hey, that's what Hoosiers do, right? We shoot buckets. In terms of what I would say, um, if before I graduated, I'd say party more, drink less. You know, I probably could have spent a lot more time with my friends and hanging out um, if I wouldn't have quite had so many hangovers. So that's one thing I would tell myself. In terms of after I graduated and was looking for a job, I'll tell you exactly what I told myself. I made a list of probably 10 different industries that I would be interested in getting into and companies within that industry. And I started knocking on doors, but at the same time, I got a job as a bartender at night now because I needed to pay my bills. And so the way I looked at those first jobs, I wasn't looking for a perfect job. I was looking for a job that I could learn. And effectively, I told myself verbatim, you know, I spent 4 years paying tuition at IU. Now I'm getting paid to learn. And that's the way I look at this. You know, whatever job I took right out of the gate from Indiana, now I'm getting paid to learn. And just like I spent 4 years at IU, and you know, who knew where it was going to take me next? I wasn't looking for a career. I was looking to just get going.
So going off that, do you think owning a business, being Motley's Pub in college, enhanced your experience at all?
Yeah, of course. Think of it. It was in Dunkirk Square, right across from Nick's. I don't even know what the bar is there right now, or was there. And there was a line to get in almost every night until all my friends got busted because I let in underage drinkers. So yeah, I learned a lot. And would I do that again in a heartbeat? Just having the experience was great. But would I, make the choice not to go to college and just start a business? No, because let me just tell you what IU did for me. Most importantly, I learned how to learn. I just, when I got to IU, I was excited to learn, but I tried so many different things, took so many different types of classes, met so many different types of people, had so many dorm room discussions that I realized that I really enjoyed learning. And that was a trade, and that's a skill that I carry to this day that's very important to me. And two, I learned all the languages of business. I learned how to do prospectuses by taking an entrepreneurship class. I learned about finance, so I could go through budgets and understand the rate of returns, etc. I learned about marketing. I learned about sales. There's stats, you just name it. There were so many different things that I learned that I needed, because if I didn't have those skills, I wouldn't have been able to start a business by myself. Like when I got fired from the job to start my first real company, Your Business Software. And if I didn't have that wide range of skills, I wouldn't have been able to do it, because I understood accounting, so I could do budgets. I understood sales. I learned technology. So I had all the fundamentals in place for me to go out there and get it done. And so all those things were important to me. And I don't think I would have been able to pull it off had I not done it that way.
Yeah, I think learning is so important. And going off of those skills, Jackson asked, when you were a student in undergrad, how could you tell the difference between a decent business idea and a great one when they occurred to you?
I had no idea. I had no idea. Obviously every idea I had was a great idea, and I made sure everybody knew it was a great idea. Like selling powdered milk because it was cheaper than milk and it didn't matter what it tasted like, because kids really just needed to save money on milk for the cereal. All my ideas were great. Letting in underage kids into a bar, that's a great idea. Having drinks, at the bar that were milkshakes, where I would Milky Way milkshakes, where I would get the blender and put in a full Milky Way and ice and some milk and vodka, so you couldn't taste the vodka. I mean, they were all great ideas. It doesn't matter though. You learn from all of them, and I learned from all of them. And so, that's the thing about being an entrepreneur. I'm not a big fan of taking money first, because when you raise money, That's not an accomplishment, it's an obligation. And that's the key, right? You don't want to be in a situation where you're making decisions because you've raised money. I was able to make mistakes. I was able to be wrong. I was able to fail and not feel bad because I didn't raise money from anybody.
Okay. So after you got to that point and you learned and had skills, what was the most difficult part from you transitioning from college to the professional world?
Being responsible, getting up in the morning, sticking to a schedule, um, being a good human, all the normal shit that you have to adapt to. Not thinking that, you know, 3 o'clock happy hour was a good idea. All the normal things. I mean, it was IU. I did what IU kids do, and but yeah, it was an adjustment just to be an adult. Um, and I did some of it well, and I did some of it really, really bad.
I guess that's all part of the process.
Yeah.
But with many businesses operating digitally and from home this year, what do you think are now the most important skills for young professionals to have?
Um, you've got to be a learner. Like I said, you've got to have a foundation of technology. Um, you've got to understand SEO. You've got to understand e-commerce. You've got to start understanding and really learning about AI and machine learning and understand the impact in your business, and if and when it makes sense to use it. You've got to stay ahead of the curve because so much is changing and you're competing. When I was getting going, the rule was you're always competing with Microsoft. Now you're always competing with Amazon. And that's not a bad thing as long as you know you're doing it. They're going to have obviously some advantages, but I used to have this old saying I heard, and I don't even remember where I got it, but it was, when you dance with the elephants, there's to quicken the dead. And when you're starting up, you can do all this stuff by yourself with a laptop and an internet connection and whatever skills you have, technology skills, but you've got to be very agile and you've got to be very resilient, and you've got to recognize that things change in the blink of an eye, like we saw with the pandemic. So those are you can start any business on your own with sweat equity, any digital or technology business, but you've got to recognize that there are certain skills that you either have to have or partner with somebody, or you're going to have to pick up very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's all very important. And I got a lot of questions, of course, about entrepreneurship, and a lot were, what first spurred your passions in entrepreneurship?
I think, growing up, my parents, neither one of them went to college. Neither one of them, my dad always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but didn't know how. And so they always just told me, you're going to be the one, right? You're the oldest, so you've got to figure it out. And, because it wasn't just like, okay, whatever you want, here it is. I pretty much had to pay my own way. Whenever I wanted something, I had to figure out how to earn it, whether it was, shoveling driveways, selling baseball cards, buying and selling stamps, selling garbage bags. I was the definition of the 12-year-old side hustle, right? I mean, everything you can imagine, I was doing just, so I had an allowance and I could buy stuff that I otherwise couldn't buy. So, it's just something. And once I got started as a kid, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I wasn't afraid of selling. I mean, I sold magazines door to door just to make money. And it was one of the best things I ever did. I mean, it was like, hi, my name is Mark. When you tell your family that you just spent $1 a week for the joy and education of your family, they're going to be so proud of you. So give me $20 and sign on the bottom line and get a subscription to Popular Mechanics, Time, and Newsweek. It's just, you learn how to sell and you learn how to deal with objections. And that was a skill set that, up until this day, I could walk into any set of circumstances. And as long as I'm prepared, know that I can do a good job selling.
There you go. So I got a lot of questions about like the hurdles of starting a business, like patenting and the legal side and acquiring funds. But were your advice just to be to go out and get it done and learn the hard way?
I mean, look, if you're trying to start a car company to compete with Elon Musk, you're going to have to raise a lot of money. But even in that circumstance, the key is going to be your intellectual property. So where do you put together that intellectual property, and how do you deal with it, and how do you prove it out? You don't have to start building cars before you have your technology, but 99.99% of businesses can be started with sweat equity. You and a friend, or just you, can put together prototypes or samples or, minimum viable products, and get out there and get a response. And, like I would always tell myself, that the key to know that I've sold something is when I got money from somebody. So if you can get somebody to Cash App or Venmo you some money, that's how you're going to prove that it works. Or if you have an app, if you can do an MVP and get your friends to actually use it, not just tell you it's great, because your friends are going to lie to you. They're going to lie their asses off and just say, oh, best app idea ever, pass me a beer. You've actually got to get them to actually use it and live with it and give you honest to goodness feedback. Because the hard part, one of the hardest things of starting a business isn't actually starting the business. It's not lying. It's not lying to yourself, right? Because you're so amped and you're so excited and you think this is going to be the best thing ever. That's what motivated you to start it. But you tend to dismiss things that are important. Oh, it doesn't matter that, here's the best. Yeah, it doesn't matter that Amazon just got into this business and this industry. That just validates my concept. No, it means unless you have something unique and truly protectable, they're going to squash you like the cockroach you are, to quote my friend Kevin, right? And so you've got to be brutally honest and self-aware. And that's one of the challenges entrepreneurs have. And I'm just as guilty, but I found myself getting into the habit, which really paid off dividends for me, of always asking myself, if I was competing with my own company, how would I kick my ass? How would I kick my own ass, right? What would I do as a competitor to beat me? And how do I address those issues so they can't do it? And that was always the key. Starting, it takes a lot to start a business. It takes a lot to get it going, but it really takes the most to really be honest and do the work. Bobby Knight, if you guys remember him, guy who used to coach at IU, once said, when I was a freshman, I think, way back when, he was on 60 Minutes and they interviewed him, and all of B-Town just shut down. The whole place was shut down because Bobby Knight was on television. And as part of the interview, he said, you know what? Everybody's got the will to win, but very few people have the will to prepare. And those are the ones that win. And if you think about it, he's right. When you start a company and you talk to your friends, you're sitting around, you're in Foster Quad, right? You're back in Shade B109 where I lived, or McGee 1, and you're shooting the shit with all your guys or your friends. And you're like, oh, this is the best idea. And you know what? I really feel like I'm destined to make this happen. It's me, right? I've got that will to win. I'm going to get it done. We all say that stuff. The reality is, it's only the people that have the will to prepare that go out there and win. And Bobby Knight was right.
Of course. So going out to all that will to win, all that strategy, Jose asks, would you recommend a student who wants to be an entrepreneur do start a business in their college experience, or would that necessarily entail other things?
Well, obviously running a business entails other things, but I would tell you this one, the best time to start a business is when you can start a business and you know what you're going to start and you have a competitive advantage. If you find yourself asking, I really want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know what business to start, you're not ready yet. It's just not time, because being an entrepreneur isn't where you're just like, okay, you know what, I'm an entrepreneur. Let's go search just for something that I might be interested in, and I'll use that to start a business. Or let me go online and what's the best way to start a business when you're a junior in college? No. And in order to be successful, you've got to be able to prepare, but you also have got to be good. You got to be good at what you're doing. You can't suck. People who suck at their jobs, people who suck at their companies aren't successful. So you've got to be good, and you've got to ask yourself, what's different about what I'm doing? And excuse me, how am I going to be good?
We've heard a lot about starting businesses, but Ian asked, how do you decide when the right time to exit is if it's not working out?
When you can't pay your bills, if you don't see a path to you and profits, that's when it's time. I mean, yeah, you want to go down with the ship, and yeah, you want to, really give it your best, but you'll know, right? You'll know when you'll come up when you just can't go any further, for whatever reason. There can be 1,000,001 reasons, but if you can't go any further, it's time to close the doors and go on to the next, and you learn from it. I learned more from the bad companies I worked for than I did from the good companies.
I think that's very wise. Jessica asks, when you evaluate a business on Shark Tank, beyond just the financial metrics, what do you usually look for in companies that you're willing to invest in?
So the first thing I look for is if they come in and I think to myself, oh, wow, why didn't I think of that? That's always a good sign, because it's something that it means that I'm excited about something, and I think it makes total sense to me. The second thing is I look for their competitive advantage or differentiation. Is there a way for them to protect their business? If someone comes in and they're the 1001st Uber for something, right? Or I'm going to be the next TikTok, but our videos are going to be 16 seconds and 32 seconds. We're going to be different because everybody I talk to likes 16-second videos better. Then it's just not going to work. So I look for something that truly makes sense, gets me excited, is truly differentiated and protectable, and also has an entrepreneur that I think is a learner, a worker, and a seller. Because if you aren't excited enough about your product to be the best salesperson in the organization, it's definitely not going to work.
Looks like we have a question in the chat. How do you balance and manage all of your activities, being the Maverick, Shark Tank, business, networking, and any family time?
I'm rich. I get to pick and choose my hours.
Yeah.
No, when I was poor, I didn't have any balance. None. I mean, I would date girls and it'd be like, it's me or your business. And I'd say to them, what was your name again? And that truly happened one time. You have to make choices. For some people, work-life balance is really, really important. For everybody, mental health is really, really important. But you have to be honest with yourself and really determine, what your limits are and what you need and how you balance your life and, how much you can work. And you've really got to be self-aware. Otherwise, it's not going to work. I happen to be the type of person that, when I was writing software, you give me a bucket of ribs and some paper towels, and I would sit there and program and look up, and it'd be 20 hours later. It was crazy. I would just be concentrating so hard I would lose track of time. And so, I wasn't really into balance. I was into just getting there. But everybody, you just got to know yourself and know what works for you, but always be aware of your mental health. Always, because running a business is stressful, very stressful. There's moments when you think you're not going to win, that you're going to go out of business. It's happened to me. I remember, I've got $15,000 in accounts receivable, and we've been in business 3 months, but am I going to make it? Or if I don't, if I lose this customer, my business is dead. And that's happened to all of us. And so you've really got to be cognizant of your personal issues, so that you don't crush yourself.
Is it true you didn't take a vacation for 7 straight years?
Very true. Yep. That doesn't mean I didn't go out and have a cocktail. I mean, after all, I owned a bar, went to IU, right? So yeah, I'd go out with my friends and we'd go have drinks and everything. But when they would go to Mexico or go on spring break or go whatever, I was grinding it out. And it's not really as crazy as it sounds, because when you're a small business, your customers run your life. You don't run the company, your customers do. And it's hard until I built it up enough where I had people that because I learned how to hire and learned how to hire managers eventually, and then I could trust being gone. But until then, I was all in, but I loved it. It wasn't like I felt awful. Oh my God, I got to go to work. It was okay. Let's go kick some ass. Yeah, it's stressful. Yeah, I'm afraid of losing some business, but screw it. I'm down. Let's go.
So I guess in that same time period, Sam asked, before Micro Solutions, when things maybe weren't necessarily going well, was there ever a fear of not making it, or were you always confident that you'd always find a way to success?
No, I was terrified. Oh my God. I mean, I was sleeping on the floor, 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment, gained about 20, 25 pounds, because the only thing I could afford to eat was going to a bar, putting up $3 for a beer, and then eating all the fried mushrooms they would put on the table, and popcorn and peanuts. And that was my dinner. We would go to Tom Thumb grocery store right around the corner from where we all live. And at midnight on the nose, they would mark down the price of the chicken, and we would buy up all the nasty chicken for $1.29, because you got these big piece of chickens. It was like straight out of Chris Rock, big piece of chicken. And then these 2 huge potato fries, I mean, just nasty. And yeah, I was terrified. And, but at the same time, it was just like, I'm not going to stop, because look, realize my car. Let me tell you the story about how. So I had a Fiat X19 when I was in Bloomington, and after the bar fell apart and all that didn't work, and I went down, did some other things, and headed down to Texas. My Fiat X19 had a hole in the floorboard, and every 60 miles or so it needed oil, and it broke down like not after I got to Dallas. You know how I got my car? Because my credit was awful. I got turned down for a Sears credit card. I got turned down for a Radio Shack computer. My credit was awful. And so I couldn't just go buy a car. And so I was with my friends one time who were sick of dragging me around. And no lie, there was a Trans Am on the side of the road. And I'm like, pull over. Nobody just leaves a good Trans Am on the side of the road. And the door was open or the window was down, whatever. I opened it up and there's bank papers in there. Honestly, got bank papers in there. And so I get back and I called the bank and I said, look, this is where this car is. I'm sure you guys are looking for it because I'm guessing this guy, whoever's car it is not paying his car payments. If you let me take over the car payments, if you give me the car, I promise I'll take over the car payments. And look, you're still ahead of the game. They're like, sure. And it was the worst junker piece of shit Trans Am, but it got me through a couple months till I could get a car.
It was the worst Trans Am, but it was a Trans Am, I guess.
It was a car. It didn't matter.
Max says, which one of your ideas or ventures did you think was going to be the most successful, but turned out to actually be the biggest flop? And how did you learn from that?
I actually, my first couple ones, first real Micro Solutions, which was just, sweat equity. I didn't know how big it could be or small it would be. And that turned out well. I mean, we sold that. And then I took time off and traded stocks and I did really well there. So by the time we started the streaming industry with AudioNet, I remember meeting with our employees. We had like 20 employees and telling them, look, this is either going to be worth $5 billion and we're going to be so filthy stinking rich because we're going to replace cable and satellite with, putting audio and video over the internet, or we'll all just be friends. And so that was their last real startup that I had, where I had to go to work every day and run it. Like the Mavs I bought, obviously, and there were people there running it for better or worse. And other companies, I'm an investor, but not really the operator. And so I was fortunate, after Micro Solutions, I made a lot of money trading stocks. And so I was set. But when we started AudioNet, Todd Wagner, who also is an IU alum, because we wanted to listen to IU basketball. And when we started doing that, and I started figuring out how we can get, audio then online and getting people to listen to it, we were effectively YouTube way before YouTube. I knew we were going to make it. So I've been fortunate. I really haven't been in the situation where I went all in on something and didn't think it would work.
Natalie asks, what role should corporations have in society? Should they be involved with social, political, and environmental issues, or is that something that should be left to the government and its citizens?
That's up to the entrepreneur. I think we've evolved so that capitalism should be compassionate. I think that when you lift everybody up, the economy is better and businesses thrive more. You have more customers. You have people who, when there's protests that also include, destruction by fringe elements, people that are leveraging the BLM protests to destroy things and create violence, then those companies can't open. And so you want, to me, it's important now at this point to have social awareness. But in general, when I work with my Shark Tank companies or any companies, I really try to let people know that you've got to have a social mission in your business. It could be like Combat Flip-Flops, one of my Shark Tank companies. They give money to build schools for girls in Afghanistan. Almost all my companies run by anybody under the age of 40 has a social component. And so on one hand, it's up to the entrepreneur to make that determination how and what they want to do. But on the other hand, particularly if you're selling to Gen Z, if you don't have a social mission that your customers can align with, you're not going to be able to do business, and you're not going to be able to hire the best people, because they're not going to just come to work for you. And when they ask, what are we doing in the community, or what are we doing to help people, and you give them a blank stare, it's just not going to work. And let me just tell you, it's bad business too. There's so many communities in this country, particularly, disadvantaged communities where there aren't businesses and there's great entrepreneurs and there's great employees, but we don't recruit there, or we don't invest there, or we don't, encourage people to come out of there and invest. To me, it's a great opportunity. I always like to go, I told you, I gave you the one line where, if you're starting a business, you don't want to be the 1,001st person to do the Uber of. And it's the same thing with starting a business and having a social mission. You want to go where people aren't, because that's where you can have the greatest impact. And when you have a great impact, your employees love you, your employees love being part of it, and your customers love you as well. And sure, you're going to have, baby boomers that are out there saying, oh, don't do this, don't do that. But they're going to be dead soon.
I guess that's the harsh reality.
Yeah.
All right. So
You've got to look at where things are going for you and make your own decision. And look, don't get me wrong. If you decide, if I were starting a business right now, yes, having a social mission would be important. And yes, I'd like to get, $1 for every whatever sold. But at the same time, I'd make my focus being successful, because I can't have an impact if my company fails.
I see we have a new question in the chat pod. What do you think is the biggest challenge for businesses post-COVID?
Being honest with yourself about what's changed and how it's impacted your business. There's this term, creative destruction, and what it means is that when things change, hopefully there's new innovations and disruptions that change things for the better. But along the way, things get worse for somebody. When I went to IU, not far away in Terre Haute, that's where they made all the records. And I think RCA had a plant. And then there was CDs. And people were pissed in Terre Haute because, that record manufacturing company just started to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then we started downloading, and the CD business dropped off. Now we're streaming, and the download business is completely different. And streaming is most likely the future, and that's what we're with. The same thing happened now. When we see restaurants struggle, you feel awful for the people who work at the restaurants. But at the same time, it's not like people aren't eating. They're getting their food differently. They're enjoying a time out differently. People aren't going to sporting events the way we used to for obvious reasons. What are they doing for entertainment? And so you have to ask yourself how that impacts your existing business, if you've had an existing business, or what it changes. Now, when I talk about creative destruction, it also means that there's incredible opportunities. There's going to be a time 10, 20 years from now when we look back at the pandemic of 2020 and realize that there are 10, 20, 30, 50 world-class companies created specifically because things changed in the pandemic. And some IU kid realized that, oh shit, we should be doing this differently. The way we were doing it in 2019 is old school. 2021, we're doing it this way. And we're going to see a lot of those companies, and that's going to be the definition of creative destruction when we look back. But you as an entrepreneur have got to recognize that you're probably going to have to do a lot of things differently. You can't just do business the way you used to in 2019. For IU folks, it's going to be like, yeah, I remember back when I was a freshman and we used to go to the grocery store. How weird is that? Just things are going to change, and it's going to change quickly.
So shifting over to the sports industry, it's actually of great interest to IU and Kelley that Kelley opened up their first sports industry workshop, which helps students develop connections, getting into the industry. But coming from an owner himself, what is the best way you think is to get started in the sports industry?
Well, you got to understand what the sports industry needs. There's only so many jobs available in sports, and there's 10 times more sports management majors than there are jobs. And if you're going to step up, you're going to have to find a way to get in. And to do that, you've got to have a skill set where that sports organization says, okay, I need this. Typically, it's going to be sales. We always need salespeople, whether it's for sponsorships, whether it's for tickets, whatever it may be. There may be a little bit of events-driven stuff. And then there's the basketball side, which is all analytics and all artificial intelligence. It's not even statistics anymore. That's old school. Just being able to do linear regressions and trying to come up with advanced plus minuses or alternatives to win shares and all that stuff. No, sixth graders do that now. I mean, there's just no value to that anymore. What we're looking for is how do you use pose estimation with computer vision in order to do, to be able to figure out the quickest way down the court to increase your points per possession. All this stuff that is really driven as much by geometry and AI as anything else. So the way we're evaluating players, the way we're doing simulations, the way we're trying to find new ways, for example, using computer vision and pose estimation to an AI to be able to look at a player in every single possession they have the ball and look to see if there's a tell. Right? Does somebody twitch their eye, before they shoot, so our players can look to see for an eye twitch, just things that you can't do by just manually going through and looking at every possession and trying to tag everything. It's just impossible. There are not enough man hours. or woman hours in the year to do it. And so try to find a unique skill that you have that you're sure is of value to an organization. It's not to say that you don't get lucky and the Pacers aren't hiring for pick a job, right? But at the same time, it's going to be difficult. There's 30 NBA teams, 32 NFL teams, etc. And there's not a ton of jobs there. So there's also the scenario where you're probably going to be working with a college or with a minor league team, and minor league teams are all upside down now because of the pandemic. So you're going to have to find a unique skill set that you can use to sell yourself and prove that you can create value.
Yeah, I know Chad Buchanan of the Pacers. I believe he had a JD and then just grinded his way up from ticket sales all the way up to finding value for Herb and them. So that was.
I went to college where Pete graduated right after me. I'm spacing Pete's last name that works with the Pacers as well. I played rugby with him, but yeah. So you've got to just work your way up. He did the same thing from a video room, and I'll tell you this: video editing, no matter what job you're in, is one of the best skills that you can have. If you can walk in the door and be great at video editing, you will find a job somehow, some way, because whether it's for sales presentations, pitches, cutting plays for the team, no matter what it is, you're going to have a skill set that is truly in need. Yeah, I mean, it's just something that really has come to the forefront now.
Joe asks, as an owner of an NBA team, winning and profit are the top objectives. So how do you balance? And at what point do you decide that profit takes precedence over winning or vice versa?
I'll answer the second one first. It never does. Never. I've got money. I got a lot of money. I only got one of these guys back there. See that guy?
Oh, there it is. 2011. Very nice.
Yep. And I want more. I'm greedy. I want more. So I always put winning ahead of everything else. But at some point, there's a point of diminishing returns. You don't want to be stupid. And so I try to be smart about what we do. And, again, that's where analytics come in. You want to be able to make the correct choices that put the best team on the court that gives you the best chance to win a championship.
Yeah, I believe the Mavericks didn't even start turning a profit till the TV deals kicked in a few years ago, right?
True. Well, let me tell you, speaking of analytics, let me tell you a quick story. And so when I was in Bloomington as a freshman, I decided that I wanted to take my hard classes first when I was living in Foster Quad, Shea B109. And I wanted to take my freshman and sophomore classes, my junior and senior years, when I'd be old enough to drink and I could just party. And so I went to register, and this registration was a whole lot different back then. And I'm like, there's a line to register for this class, which was K501, which was MBA level statistics. I'm like, I'm going to see if I can sneak in. So I did. And I snuck in and I took this class, which was taught by a guy named Wayne Winston. He was my professor. And Wayne Winston used his version of analytics in way back when I was a freshman, when I was 18, to teach statistics. Fast forward, I had just bought the Mavs. And I'm watching Jeopardy. And all of a sudden I hear, now, however they introduce people, Wayne Winston from Indiana University. And Wayne goes on there and crushes it and wins like 6 in a row. So I'm all fired up for him. Fast forward a couple of months, I go to Indianapolis. The Mavs play the Pacers for the first time since I bought the team. And I hear, Mark. And I look up, and I never would have remembered him from my freshman year if I had not seen him on Jeopardy. And there's Wayne Winston yelling for me. And I'm like, hey, Wayne, what's up? And we start talking. I'm like, why don't you become the first analytics person or stats person in the NBA? And right then, I hired Wayne Winston, and he was the first analytics person, full-time analytics person in the NBA.
Wow. I learned that Wayne Winston is Vivian Winston's husband, for everyone here who's taken A100. She's the lovely teacher of that. And I see a lot of questions about Giannis. I'm not going to put you in a sticky situation to answer those, but do you have any idea what the rest of the NBA will look like this upcoming year?
No. I mean, I'm just as uncertain as you guys are. All I can tell you is make sure you watch tonight's game. Look, if you're not fired up to watch tonight's game, then you're not going to work in the NBA, because you've got to love the NBA. You got to love NBA basketball. But what it's going to look like next year, it's going to be safety first. So, I happen to be, I think we'll get a vaccine, and I think it'll come a little bit sooner than people expect. So by the beginning of the year, it'll be more widespread. Excuse me. If that happens, then we'll be able to open back up, hopefully in February, and start playing with fans and seats again.
Speaking of watching games, the TV viewership has declined over the past few years. Are you at all worried about that, or is that a long-term concern of the league?
No, it's not a long-term concern at all. I mean, you got to look at the circumstances. I mean, we're not playing in a regular season. We're playing when there's zillions of sports on. We're playing when you've got people that have unlimited number of viewing choices. And so when you have so many choices, I mean, look at this. Look at it this way. Look at horse racing. The Preakness and the Kentucky Derby were down by 60-some%. It's not like the horses are making political statements, and, changing everything. It's not like there's some horse running the Preakness, talking to another horse that get woke, go broke, right? Or so all that nonsense. And so, no, I'm not worried, because once we get back to our season, it's us and the NHL and college basketball, and that's pretty much it. And people, and plus, it also does make a difference when people are talking about going to the games and excited to go to games. You get more interest in 30 different NBA cities, and that adds up to the interest for the league and creates storylines, etc. And we haven't had any of those things. And so, I would tell you that up until the finals, our ratings were actually not bad, better than I expected. Our finals have been down more than I had hoped, but I think we're going to come back just fine.
It's good to hear. And Andres asks, what did it feel like beating LeBron in the Heat in 2011?
It was really good. It was really, really good. Yeah, because everybody thought we were going to lose. They thought we were going to lose in the first round to Portland. They thought we were going to lose in the second round to the defending champion Lakers, and we swept them. They thought we were going to lose to Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook against OKC in the conference finals. And then they obviously thought we were going to lose to the Heatles, the biggest super team ever. And I'll even tell you a quick story that I haven't told most people. Game 2, we're in Miami, and we're down. Was it game 2? Yeah, and we're down to them at halftime. And Pat Riley basically says to me, Mark, you guys have got no chance. We're long, we're lean, we're mean, and we've got this. And that second half, we make this all-time great comeback and go on to win. So, I also learned a lesson that you gotta play the games, right, and see what happens.
I feel like that could be in a Last Dance scene where you took it personally once Pat Riley said that, but I don't know. So who inspires you the most? That was a really commonly asked question.
I mean, my dad, came up with nothing. And, everything I have or done, I owe to my parents. And he just wanted the best for me and always encouraged me and always supported me. It wasn't like he was a mentor. He would tell me, I have no idea what you're doing. I don't understand what you're doing, but keep on doing it. But he always had my back, and that's all you can ever ask.
That's amazing. Someone asks, what did you guys see in Doncic that other teams didn't back in that draft?
I mean, it wasn't hard to see it. It's just, people get, in all businesses, and basketball in particular, people get these prejudices that, so-and-so is not athletic enough, not tall enough, not quick enough. You've got to be this, you've got to be that. And we've just never subscribed to that. I mean, Dirk didn't look prototypical anything. Steve Nash wasn't prototypical anything, and when we got with Luka, really what we saw was a guy who was a winner, a guy who was a competitor, but also a change happening in the NBA. The best players, if you look at LeBron, Kawhi, Luka, going down the list, they're able to bring the ball up and create shots for themselves and create for others and have an incredible basketball IQ. Luka is all those things, and he can rebound and he can pass, right? And so he makes everybody on the court better, but you really have to be able to bring the ball up the court. And in this day and age with zones and it's all switching, you've got to be big enough to be able to see over defenders, to see all the action on the weak side of the court. And Luka checked all those boxes. And the fact, 17, 18 years old, winning championships against grown-ass men, I mean, it was just incredible. So it was hard to say no.
Absolutely. I see another Mavericks fan asked, when can we expect Kristaps to return?
I'm not sure. We'll find out here in the next couple of days. But he'll be there. I mean, if not for the very start of the season, within a couple of weeks of the start of the season, whenever that happens to be.
Is it January, February right now?
I'm guessing it's going to be February. That would be my best guess.
Well, it's well known you like to read, and Daniel asks, what books are you reading right now, and what are your current favorites?
Competing in the Age of AI was a book I just read. or I'm reading. Rebooting AI was the book before that. The book Michael Cohen wrote about Donald Trump was the book before that.
Yep.
And so those are the primary books I read. I used to really read a lot of business books because I would get fired up and learn something. And one of the reasons I tell people to read a lot, and you can also add to that, watch educational videos on YouTube, just wherever you get your knowledge. But books in particular, all it takes is one idea, just one, that propels you to do something incredible. I mean, Steve Jobs famously said, everything's a remix. Steve, when the Apple first came out, it pretty much copied this stuff from this company called Xerox, a mouse and word processing and all this stuff, but he just did it a little bit better. And so he always said it's a remix. And that's the way I've always looked at stuff. If I can just keep on learning and adding new things to it, I create such a knowledge base that I can come up with new ideas and, see things coming before other people see them.
Do I even dare ask why the Mavericks didn't re-sign Steve Nash back in the 2000s?
Yeah, it was my mistake. Just because I thought our doctors said that he was going to have back issues, and obviously he worked through it, so it wasn't an issue. That was my biggest Mavericks mistake.
Well, luckily he made up for it with Luka, and one of the greatest players of this generation. As someone who can buy anything in the world, Lucas asks, what's one thing you want that you don't have?
All the time in the world, guaranteed health for my kids, world peace, unity in this country, ending economic inequality, just, building things so that we actually can look anybody in the eye and feel good that we're all, American citizens and that we all have the same opportunities. And, that's something you can't buy that we can all can work for.
Max asks, was there ever a point in your career which you felt like you made it, or were you satisfied with your accomplishments, or were you always hungry for more?
Always. I'm a competitive guy, man. I compete. I named my little book, if you get a chance. I talk a lot about this stuff, how to win at the sport of business. To me, business is the ultimate sport. You're competing 24/7 by 365. There's 38 or 40,000, whatever it is, IU students that could potentially be my competition in business someday. And I want to kick all y'all's asses. And so, in order to do that, you always got to keep moving forward.
Going back to that, I guess what you can't have question, the Black Lives Matter protests have been huge lately. So what do you think that speaks to society, and how important is that in this day and age?
It's very important. I mean, look, we all said the Pledge of Allegiance, and it says liberty and justice for all. It didn't say for some, doesn't say just for a few. It says for all. And that's an ideal we all pledge to every single morning growing up. And so to me, it was very important. And look, I'm not going to lie and said I understood it completely. As a white person, first, let me just say, saying as a white person is uncomfortable. If I hadn't been doing so many of these interviews, I've gotten more comfortable saying it, but white people don't talk about race. When I was in Bloomington, never one time in my life, even with black friends, did we ever sit down with my white friends and say, what is it about race in this country, or what are we doing right, or what are we doing wrong? People of color do it all day because they have to deal with it all day, every day. And so it really, the Black Lives Matters movement, and that's not to be confused with the website and the people who created the hashtag, but they're not connected. They're two different things. But the movement itself really has made people think, and it's taught me a lot, and it's really had me talk to a lot of people that gave me different perspectives, from people of color that I didn't previously have. And, it's an ideal that we really need to continue to strive for this country, that we need liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I'm glad you could touch on that. But I guess the political nature of the question has got a lot of people asking, would you ever run for president one day?
Well, first, it's not political, right? Equal rights is political, right? That's an American ideal that we all pledge to. Liberty and justice for all. Some people try to make it seem like it's political to try to avoid it or deflect, but it's not political. And would I run? I thought about it. My family voted it down, and it's not going to happen now. I'm not, as some of you may know, I'm not a Donald Trump fan, and he was the only reason I even considered it. But since he's out one way or the other after this term, and everybody go vote early, go vote. But yeah, once he's done, I'll return to being apolitical.
Is it ever likely you purchase a second sports team in your lifetime?
No, I thought about it. I thought about buying the Pirates, my home team. I thought about
Mhm.
buying a baseball team. Um, and it just was like, and even a hockey team before the Mavs, but more than one team now with three kids. My kids now are 11, 14, and 17. They're too much fun. You know, my 17-year-old daughter can be a little bit much at times, but beyond that, yeah, I have too much fun spending time with my family.
Emily asks, are there any companies you didn't make a deal with that you wish you did on Shark Tank?
On Shark Tank, no. In real life, I mean, Uber, Top Golf. Yeah, there were some I just blew it, and a lot of times, mostly it's just because they were great entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs were better than the idea. Um, but yeah, and on Shark Tank now, because you know we go down there and we shoot for 20 days and we're seeing 8 to 10 deals a day. And once they leave, if I haven't done a deal, I've forgotten. It's like last month's breakfast. I couldn't tell you. I don't remember anything about them.
And actual pitches on Shark Tank are more like an hour, hour and a half, right? Not
Yeah,
that 10
they
minutes we see.
easily. So the dumb ones that are made for TV, dumb ones are 20, 30 minutes, and they cut them down to 10, 15 minutes. But the intense ones where we're competing and asking questions and trying to get a real handle on the business can go for an hour and a half or 2 hours.
This is something I've always wondered, but how much of the financials do you actually see? Because on TV, they just show like the cost per unit, and how much debt they're in. And
We get to
that's
ask
it.
questions, but that's all we see. Now if we do a deal with them, we do get to do due diligence. So I've had, companies come and I end up doing a deal on TV, but then you do the due diligence and they say, well, my cost to make my widgets is $1. But the reality is it's only $1 if they sell 600 billion of them and they've sold 3, stuff like that.
So some deals do fall through then behind the scenes on Shark Tank?
Yeah. So probably 30% of the deals fall through.
Is that just on your end or their end too, that they're not
Some
aligned with
sharks a
it?
little bit more fall through. I probably close more of my deals than anybody else, but it's about 30% for me.
All right. Who is your favorite shark on Shark Tank apart from yourself?
Just me.
Just you.
Just me. No,
Nikki.
in terms of who I like Barbara the most. Barbara's a beast. Before I forget, Shark Tank premieres a week from today. A week from today on October 16th on ABC and on Hulu. So if you don't have regular TV or you don't have an antenna or whatever, turn us on 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Repeat after me. Shark Tank premieres a week from today, October 16th on ABC. And
Mark
with that
your
knowledge,
calendars.
yeah, mark your calendars. And with that, you'll also know that Barbara's my favorite. When they edit these things down from however long the pitches are, they can't really make us look bad because that would kill the TV vibe of it all. But Barbara says some of the craziest shit ever, and freaks people out. I'll say something like, I'll curse, like someone says something ridiculous, or if they come on, and they're trying to scam, like I really get on people who make claims for supplements and stuff like that. And I'll say something knowing they're going to edit it. Like, that's so fucked up. You're a fuck, this, that.
Yeah.
Barbara, on the other hand, will say, has anybody ever told you you're attractive? If I sleep with you, would you do a deal with me? And the people, whoever it is, the entrepreneur will just be like in shock. And she's always doing stuff like that. Barbara will say to Kevin, yeah, I tried to sleep with Kevin, but then I got a little closer and realized it wasn't worth it. And like, we're dying laughing, just dying, because we know Barbara, and the entrepreneurs are like in shock. Like, if you ever see like trailers or commercials and you see the entrepreneur's eyes get real big or whatever, it's probably because of something Barbara said.
Wow. I knew she was savvy with the franchise and everything, but I didn't know all that came out too behind the
Oh
scenes.
yeah,
That's
she's a
funny.
beast. She's crazy.
All right. So I guess we'll take a few more questions. Don't want to take up too much more of your time, but Henrietta asks, what's your favorite memory from IU?
Oh boy, my friends, just all the times with my friends. Literally, my friends from IU, the rugby team and the dorms and my roommates, most of them are still my best friends today. I mean, we still keep in touch and talk all the time and get together. Go back to Bloomington and act like we're still 18 again. It has to be friends. In terms of stuff, the opening night for my bar, when there was a line to get in, and we had taken a lot of my student loan, and if we hadn't had lines to get in, I would have been booted out of school. So that was probably second. And then just, yeah, it's got to be my friends because they're still my best buds.
Would you ever get back to teaching disco dancing at sororities if asked to?
You know, probably the best job I've ever had. $25 an hour going to sorority houses, teaching them line dances and all the different, dances of the time. I couldn't get hired fast enough.
That sounds fun.
I don't think it would work quite anymore though.
Might be tough. Ritwig asks, when are you visiting IU, or do you have any plans to?
Yeah, usually, I'll try to get down there when we have a rugby reunion. And so that's when everybody sees me stumbling around campus with my buddies and falling into Knicks. Because like I said, me and my rugby buddies and my IU buddies, it's just like we're back at sports. It used to be called the Regulator, or we'll go where my bar was, or we'll go to Knicks and play Sink the Biz. Just like you always see alums come stumbling in and out, acting like idiots, like they're still 21. You'll see me there sometime.
All right. Well, I've seen the questions stop trickling in, and this has gone a little over time, but I'd like to thank you again so much for this opportunity. I think we all really enjoyed this. It was really insightful, and I'm so glad we could do this. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Chase. Thanks for reaching out. Go Hoosiers. And thanks everybody. Hey, hang in there. I know the pandemic is crazy and upside down, but we'll get through this. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. And everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. You can look forward to some more events with alumni and such during Kelley Family Week coming up in October. But other than that, I hope you have a great night and a great weekend. Thanks, guys.